すがホッケスティックか。和風なのか洋風なのかわからんがうまいぞ。
Media is intended to inform and entertain. I like watching things. Movies were, at a time, the most important thing in my life. Over time, my priorities have shifted, my worldview has become something that it wasn't, and my ability and interest to digest certain types of media has declined. I used to love horror and action, but a softening of my taste has led me to become less driven to watch media where stakes are high and bad things might happen to good or even mediocre people. I love comics and manga, but a glut of new content that consistently leans towards serialization, much like the massive events in comics or hundreds of chapter-long manga stories that want you to engage with countless storylines to keep up, both in print and on screen, have worn me out over time.
I am tired of Earth. These people. I'm tired of being caught in the tangle of their lives.
In my daily life, no matter how exhausted or frustrated or down I am, the tangible thing that I can count on to improve my disposition is food and drink. This preference for slowed down media and interest in dining has led me to a pretty unique niche of Japanese media: food stories.
Now, 時間か。寝足りないな。
文化部の方ですね。すみません。いらっしゃるの気がつかなかったものですから、すみません。
Damn, he just like me for real. For real. Rapping my ass off. I don't have
a few years ago, my partner brought home a recently translated collection of classic manga that ran from the 1980s until pretty recently. Oishinbo's pages tell a story about two journalists working on the ultimate food menu, with cooking and tasting battles that focus more on the quality and history of the food and drinks presented than the conflict itself. Sure, there are fights here, mostly between the protagonist and his high-profile but pretty awful father.
一つだけ言っておく。お前には物の味はわからん。何？じゃああんたに一体何がわかるってんだ
？Constantly trying to disprove the other's knowledge and ability on how to cook and discern quality food and drinks, but this isn't a battle manga. The food is the focus. I fell in love with the series immediately and started cooking and trying things that were mentioned in it.
Great! It's wonderful! Amazing! Oh my god! It's beautiful! Banzai! The excellent! Wonderful! Splendid! Ridiculous! Fantastic! Oh! Banzai!
A more modern series with similar but obviously amplified narratives is Food Wars. Young chefs enrolled in a prestigious academy for cooking battle it out over their dishes. The tastiest meal comically blowing tasters' clothes off and famously depicting satisfaction like a lurid experience. It's fun, but even that can be a bit much for me, and telling people you enjoy it might give them a certain impression of where your preferences for media lie. In finding similar manga with a more toned-down feel, I was led to two series, Solitary Gourmet and Wakakozake. The two series were written years apart. In fact, Solitary Gourmet, running from 1994 until 2015, ended only a few years after Wakakozake started, but their on-screen adaptations started within a few years of each other as well. Their stories are very similar. Both tell of a worker who takes any opportunity to de-stress from their jobs by stopping in a restaurant and having a good meal. The differences are their characters. One features a middle-aged man who can't drink, and the other a young woman who definitely can. After enjoying the manga, I found that both have live-action iterations, taking their time to stretch out pretty minimal manga stories into half-an-hour shows. I enjoy both equally despite the differences in the meals that they can consume. Goro can put away food, often having what comes out to be about 2 meals in a single sitting, being unable to drink while dining at restaurants that probably expect him to, while Wakako can and does drink. Being in the United States and in a pretty expensive city, Japanese food may be available, but it can definitely add up. Unlike my experiences in Japan, where the same food is usually pretty affordable. Being able to watch these characters engage with a meal and think of their merits is almost as good as enjoying it myself. Both shows also often take place in real restaurants and include meals that I can try myself sometime, I hope. This sort of real-world engagement and human touch is really refreshing in an environment so full of unreal settings and otherworldly situations, and where small family restaurants are becoming less common in the United States. Similar series have become popular in this very specific genre as well. Netflix has its own food show based on a manga, Midnight Diner. While the restaurant featured is almost always the main setting, unlike the prior shows where the setting changes often, the stories are more detailed, and the focus always returns to a specific kind of food or drink. Netflix also recently released a series from a few years ago based on a manga written by the same author as Solitary Gourmet called Samurai Gourmet. The main concept is similar, an older male character going out to eat, but the story follows a recent retiree learning the joys of eating and drinking not constricted by the life of a working person. It's nice to watch a show revolving around older people that doesn't treat them as the punchline of some sort of joke. As an American, the only real fantasy here is retiring at the age of 60 after a median income job. Speaking of fantasy, the isekai genre isn't just for mediocre schoolboys who got hit by a truck. Two series take the otherworld trope and apply them to food: Isekai Izakaya Nobu and Isekai Shokudo. Both have manga and anime adaptations, while Izakaya Nobu also has a live-action version. These stories are also similar, both featuring a restaurant with a door that accesses another world. Izakaya Nobu follows a light fantasy medieval theme, where a Japanese restaurant's entrance leads into a fantasy kingdom. Isekai Shokudo's storefront does the same, but the fantasy elements are a bit heavier, with creatures and non-human diners.
ゲルパが異界の主から聞き出した料理を欲しいという意味を持つ注文の言葉。
オムライス大盛り、オムレツ3個持ち帰り。
これによりガガンポたちリザードマンは銀返し、銅返しと引き換えに異界のごちそうを手に入れることができるのだ。
I like Izakaya Nobu a bit more myself because it feels like my own experience. A foreigner from a different place, and in the case of traditional Japanese food and drinks, a different time, learning and trying things they otherwise might not know about, and being blown away. I didn't expect coming into Oishinbo that I would be taken down a series of media that were so quiet and reserved, but I also didn't expect to enjoy them this much. In a stressful, uncertain time, it's nice to only be challenged as much as you want. And those challenges are mostly about finding something to eat and drink that you learned about from another culture's books.